Hey there, Adrienne Elise here. Welcome to the Gaia Daily for July 24th through 27th. How are you doing? Well, this week we have Mercury and Venus coming out of their retrograde shadow, as well as Mars going into its retrograde shadow. So this is a big place of completion for the last 4 months of energy and pretty much all of 2020. And so as we go through this next week, we're looking at where are we at? What are we doing? What did we learn? What is this all about, right? And typically when you come to a place where the planets are coming out of their shadow, it's like, okay, this is what this retrograde experience has been about. And we're all trying to figure out what this Venus retrograde has been about. But the thing is that Venus is in square to Neptune for the third and final time for this last week of July. And so we're already feeling that. It's exact on the 27th, 28th. And it's really beautiful, actually, that it happens at the same time as the exact, we're now feeling tomorrow is the exact sextile, a week of Jupiter sextile Neptune. So really cool, actually, that the square and the sextile of Jupiter and Venus square Neptune are happening at the same time. It's actually really complementary and supportive. But this Venus square Neptune is making us feel maybe even more confused about what we've been going through. Typically we would be finding clarity at this point, except for that square to Neptune energies are about confusion and delusion. And so we are being asked, of course, we're having a revealing of the delusions. We're visiting back to April when we felt the first square Neptunes, March, April energy of this year, and where Venus right at the beginning of the retrograde. And so we're revisiting those places. We're trying to find clarity, but maybe feeling more confused. And the energy that's coming in around this is that when you're in this big change of direction, when you're going around that big corner, you lose perspective. You lose, wait, am I even going anywhere? Wait, did I make it anywhere? Am I stuck here in the corner? I'm like seeing a picture of like a big turn in a road going around a mountain. And as you're going around it, you don't have perspective of how far you've made it. And that's exactly the metaphor for right now. And the message coming in around this is that where you feel a lack of clarity and a lack of direction in your life, because Venus kind of rules all areas of our life as far as like what we want in our daily life, or what we want, what we care about, what matters to us, And so when we have a Venus retrograde, it's about rearranging, especially in a mutable sign, it's about rearranging all levels of our life to better fit who we are. Except with Gemini, we don't know who we are, right? And we have to like forget, lose, and get totally lost in who we are in order to get back on track. And this is the energy. So if you feel that lack of clarity and direction in any areas of your life, that means a massive shift is trying to happen there, right? So sit tight, because it might mean that what started is just the beginning of the chapter, even though the astrology is saying we're coming to the end of a chapter. But we're also, we know that the energy is that we're working with is continuing through the year of 2020. But August is about assimilating and kind of getting our bearings and taking a breather, kind of sorting what this all is about, because these issues are going to continue to be on the table, because Venus comes out of retrograde shadow next Wednesday, the 29th, and then moves into Cancer in August 7th. So that's a big shift, but then it's going over the whole energy of the Mercury retrograde again, and the eclipse season, the 2 crazy new moons in Cancer, right? So we're not done with this Venus journey. And so it's almost like we could have more feeling, because Gemini has a little bit of a hard time as an air sign to get really in touch with the deeper feelings, and Venus retrograde always brings, is about Venus is what makes us feel good, what we care about. So it's about our emotional self, our sense of well-being, right? And so moving into Cancer, it's like, okay, now we're gonna maybe be in a place where we can go a little deeper with what's come up and get, it's like, but maybe a little bit less clarity before we get more clarity, a little bit more emotional clearing and healing. And so August is kind of like, okay, well, what just happened? We got to figure out. But it's really good energy to have this Jupiter sextile Neptune. It, like I said, it's exact starting tomorrow until August 2nd, but will be the influence of it will last almost through the whole month of August. And so it's a good energy to support us in this big turning of the corner, and then the Leo energy is really good. We haven't had very much fire at all, and so the sun in Leo is kind of like, okay, who am I? This getting oriented with the sun, getting oriented with your true self, and sorting through all of this stuff and stabilizing in the new energy. But it is a close of a chapter. It's a big week, a 4-month journey. And here we are, so Mercury comes out of shadow. Like I said, Mars moves into shadow. So that's starting the next chapter. And we'll be talking more about that. And that when it starts its retrograde in September. And so, but it's already going to be in shadow. We're already moving into that energy, and I'll have a video out about that. But then, so on this weekend, Mercury comes out of shadow, and then next week, Venus comes out of shadow, right? So this next week is potent and powerful. We've got Jupiter exactly sextile Neptune, Venus coming into that square with Neptune, and these planets coming out of retrograde shadow. It's another time where it's like, pay attention. This is profound. You have worked and waited and prepared over eons for this moment in time on this planet right here, right now. And maybe that's part of the message, because the Neptune energy has a tendency to escape and want to distract ourselves, right? And it's actually a time to just be as present as you can, to soak up these energies, the support that's here for us right now. And so, but just know that this next week is like, oh yeah, no, that chapter is leaving. We thought, this Venus retrograde kind of had the feeling like we were never going to get out of that cave, and now we're like, okay, what does it mean to come out of the cave? Like, what are we doing? Where do we go next? Do we know even where we are? Were we just transported to a whole new dimensional reality? Let's hope, right? Went into the cave, and then, who knows what happened, and journeyed into another dimensional reality. And now we got to step out of the cave and be like, okay, now what? It's like, if you were doing this period of time, like really taking advantage of it, you've been stripped of so much of what you were clinging to. That might be false. It might be what you really thought was real. It might be what you spent your whole life focusing on, and then being like, ooh, it's not quite right, and that Gemini energy. So maybe it's important to use this last week or two of this Venus and Gemini to kind of, because Gemini is really about rearranging and being flexible in our mind and flexible in our sense of self. And of course, when you're so flexible, then you have no idea who you are. So that kind of fits. And maybe that's part of the message too. It's okay to be there, like, can you get comfortable in the uncomfortable of knowing you're going around a big corner and you have no idea where you came from or where you're going, but something's happening, and be in the moment and soak up the precious sun energy of Leo sun, like self-reflection, who we are in our bigger spiritual self. This is really what all of this is about. These Neptune transits are about orient yourself to spirit. There is a massive amount of who you are, this bigger self, this bigger evolved being. There's a tiny fraction of you here so far, up to this time. And it's time to land home here, right? And so it's about, we have to completely rework our whole life. And this is Jupiter is very harmonious. Jupiter in Capricorn is about building structures and shedding light on structures that don't work. And Neptune is about the cup of the spiritual energy, the connection to the oneness principle, the bigger truth of who we are, spiritual revelation, but also all the delusions and the veils that have been created in our life and in the collective consciousness to keep us from that. And Jupiter sextile Neptune is cracking that door to the higher dimensional realities of, oh, this is all about rearranging my life to support the bigger truth of who I am. And I have no idea who that is. And so it's okay to be in the unknown. It's okay to be flailing around and maybe use all of that. This last week of July is going to bring some, taking us back to the confusion of the very beginning of the Venus retrograde. Maybe some crumbs of clarity in there, but just allowing yourself to be in that unknown as much as possible, because and actually use that confusion, lack of clarity, and unknown to bring yourself back to the moment, because of course we know that's the only time we have, and that's when we can connect to that sun self and to that bigger self. And this Neptune, Jupiter sextile Neptune, creating structures that support our spiritual self. We've bought into this reality is, even if you have a purely spiritual life, in order to live here in this duality consciousness, you've had to buy into the fact on some level that what our life is about a physical expression, and there's so much more out there. If you could see, like, tear down the veil and see all the beings and energies and invisible stuff, way more than our manifested reality, And that's what gets tricky with these Neptune transits too, because it's like pulling back that veil. And then you're being affected by energies, invisible energies. You're being affected by past life energies bleeding through that are hard to access what's really going on and living out these old stories, so it's like with Neptune transits, what's on the table is those, delusions of all that you bought into in this Maya experience that have to fall away. That ego death has to happen, and that's maybe this energy of this completing this chapter is allowing that ego death to happen, or just being okay, finding comfort in it, because all that falls away is making more room for who you really are and landing that bigger self here. So again, I feel like I say this every video, but incredibly powerful time. We really need to be present and pay attention. The planets are speaking to us about the potency of what's really happening. And we know that energetic shifts happen invisibly first, right? Maybe that the energy of these Neptune transits is like, hey, you guys pay attention to the bigger energies, right? Like, life is easier on Earth when you just focus on the mundane, right? And that's how everybody's doing right now. Like, that's how they're clinging to some sort of sanity, human, like the masses through this crazy time. And yet, what we cannot move forward in our evolution until we take into account the invisible energies. And that's part of your role here. Maybe that's why you're so confused, and lost. And because you're willing, because you didn't have as strong of an ego personality construct in the first place, And so you're here to lead the way of demonstrating the bigger true spiritual self. But the structures of this world do not support that, like the invisible. The invisible has no value in this world. And maybe that's part of what we just experienced. We're just having 1 or 2 more days of this Mercury in sextile to Uranus, and Uranus is trying to bring in higher frequency vibrations into the earth plane, and it's like, you guys, there's so much more. Like, there's so many more factors to this experience that we have been programmed lifetime after lifetime to ignore, reject, have to do a song and dance to get to, that block of the lower matrix and the lower grid that keeps us from our spiritual truth. And that is falling away. So it's this next couple days too, the end, just making sure you really take advantage of that Mercury sextile Uranus. When Mercury and Uranus, Mercury is like the lower everyday mind, how we make sense of things and our perspective. And then Uranus is kind of the higher mind, trying to connect into ancient wisdom, future technology, our higher self, and the messages and synchronicities. So there can be a lot of magic when Mercury and Uranus work together in especially a sextile. And so it's like messages coming through. So it's very interesting because it's like, okay, and yet we're totally confused at the same time, but those messages coming through are about that next chapter, right? Like Uranus is speaking of the future, and the future of Earth, the future of physical form is changing. And if you as a soul having the power in your personal deliberate living to step into this continual awareness of the invisible and the future and what's really going on. That's one of the benefits of the Jupiter sextile Neptune as well. It's a bigger picture. Jupiter wants to expand, see the horizon, look at the bigger, way out, wants to travel, journey, learn, and sextile to Neptune, it's about learning about that oneness principle and our cup of God and what's our true spiritual potential. Those are the new structures that we need to build. Of course, you can't build the new until you get rid of the old, and here we are. It's just like I feel like every message in the video is like, okay, got to get rid of the old so you can make room for the new. And this dance that we've been in for so long of like 1 foot in the new paradigm and 1 foot in the old paradigm, but we are getting somewhere. It's just a very, very big, massive shift beyond what you can imagine. And you've already started, you're going around the corner. And so you have no idea where you are and what you're doing. So hang in there. And just there are these lighter energies, kind of like that sun, Leo sun, and these sextiles like peeking through the clouds, and reach out and grab that right now. Fortify yourself, and that's all about like, oh, this is who I am. I'm not what everybody wanted me to be. I'm not all the roles I played for all these lives. You're a big, huge star being. And that's why it's been such a rough time, because you cannot keep going on that timeline. That's the death timeline for you, and you got to let it all fall away and come back home into your bigger, true spiritual self. And the astrology is supporting you in this right now. So hang tight. Let me know how you're doing. And I look forward to seeing you soon on the next update. We've got a full moon in Aquarius coming up Monday, August 3rd. So look out for information more about that, and also that Mars retrograde, as we now begin to look at the next chapter as we try to complete this one, although we don't know if we're coming or going. So hang in there, and I look forward to seeing you soon. Until then, I'm Adrienne Elise. Namaste.